I'm Carol Jesmore, and I was president in 1988. In 1989, I was ex officio. In 1990, because Ken became Commodore, I was honorary. So it was about a 5-year stint with the Auxiliary Board. It was wonderful to have input, not always taken, but it was also gratifying to see events maybe skipped one year and continued another year, and I think it kept interest in some of the auxiliary programs. In 2003, I think I was back on the board for a second time, but there are women that were very instrumental in making sure the activities continued that had happened in the past, would raise their hands and volunteer to do almost any of the tasks. And as anyone that's been on the auxiliary board knows that you're chair and co-chair and have a lot of activities and events to plan. They work so hard, everyone on the board, to make sure that other club members enjoy their experiences here. And I often say that the board of directors might be the managers of the club, but the auxiliary is the heart of the club. The big difference today, I'll start with, there are more members of the auxiliary board. They have meetings in the evenings, so women that work can join. I couldn't be on the board when my husband first joined the club in 1975 because I worked in the city. So it was only after I started a business out of my home, Sausalito Yacht Interiors, that I could participate in the auxiliary. Right at the beginning, when Ken joined in 1975, of course, women couldn't be members. But it doesn't mean that women weren't racing out of our club under our burgee, or that they didn't have boats in the harbor. They did. Ann Schellebarger was one. Susie Miller was another one. Nancy Rogers, Mary Ann Mason, Denise Ashford. And those are kind of the women right at the beginning that I met that were active sailors and racers and very inspirational. My favorite memory being president, I have to say it was kind of a negative memory, but it's very funny. Our board worked very hard all year round, and when we came to decorating the yacht club for the holidays, one other person showed up. And she and I ran around the club, and I have to say we certainly decorate the club a whole lot better now than we did then. One person in particular, and that drew me to the auxiliary, and that was Nancy Rogers. And she and I sailed a lot, raced a lot against each other, sailed a lot together with the Sea Gals eventually. And she became president and gave me a call and said, we'd like to see you join the board. A lot, especially when I was racing. Ken and I campaigned a couple different boats. Sea Gals were a wonderful group of women. We just had a lot in common. It was a very fun time. The club serves its members, and especially the auxiliary serves its members with all of the events surrounding the children, say Easter, Halloween, holidays. Ken included me in every aspect of racing, which was very, I hope, helpful for him, but definitely helpful for me. So we shared this, and I think it brought us closer together. It's like a teamwork. When I grew up in school, we really didn't have many athletic events for women. In fact, it's practically zero. So this was a kind of a team aspect that I really enjoyed, and racing with other people on their boats too. It was that teamwork and working, kind of getting to know each other and how to work with other people, and as well as learning from each other. And as people that race and sail know, it's addictive. Not only our members, our women members, our women participating in the yacht club, it was open all to a lot of different women too. I think Sissy Crane is the one that started that. Glenn Isaacson, always took his boat queue out. Hank Easom took Yucca out. Everyone wanted to sign up early so they'd get on either one of those two boats. The Auxiliary Cup's been a lot of fun, and I can take you back to probably the ancient times, way before the Auxiliary Cup. When the Auxiliary Cup started, everyone said, "Oh, it's so fun that our club's finally sponsoring women's racing." Well, that wasn't the case. They started sponsoring women's races a long time before that. The women that were in the sea winches would take other women out. They eventually expanded. They were called the sea winches. Then they expanded to also include some of the women from the Sausalito Yacht Club, and they became the Sea Gals. And every week on a Wednesday, another woman would take other women out sailing. We'd brown bag lunches and trade off sailing different boats. I have a very funny thought, and I think it hit me this morning because, as Lisa Harris mentioned, there's so many women that are actually the members. I was thinking, wouldn't it be nice if we had a few men on the auxiliary board? Maybe I'd say that's a hope for the future. The quilt became our fundraising feature. We didn't have a lot of fashion shows early on. The quilt's a little before my time, although I know most of the women that have not only designed but sewn these 25 patches. So it was raffled off, and the winner lived in this area. A few years later, the family called the yacht club and said, "We aren't going to be using the quilt anymore. Would you like it?" And of course, the auxiliary said, "Oh, we'd love to have it back," and put it back on the wall. But I think we needed another fundraiser to have enough funds to get the quilt back from the family because they wanted us to buy it. That quilt has to be honored because when we redid the clubhouse and moved the lounges and the restrooms from the northwest side to where they are now, Staff Commodore John Swain was the lead designer and asked for some input from the auxiliary. When I first saw the plans, I looked at them and I said, "There's no lounge." And they said, "Well, you don't need a lounge." I said, "Well, what wall are we going to put the quilt on?" He said, "Oh, you don't need to display the quilt." And the auxiliary was pretty upset. So what was going to be Mull's office became our lounge, and we had a place to display the quilt. There's one square that is a little treasure chest, and the woman that did that would always make sure that there was a little coin in the treasure chest, so the whole era of young girls would come in and run to the treasure chest and pick up the coin. The other thing about moving from that area to this new area, when we looked at the plans, we got the lounge, but now we had to look at, we didn't have a shower. We felt very strongly that when we have a guest dock that's this close to the clubhouse, that it was really a safety issue for women to have to get up at 7 in the morning or whatever, go through by the old Cove House, down the parking lot, down to the youth center for showering. And we were pretty angry that the shower didn't exist. So the Commodore at the time said, "Well, okay, if you really want it, you should have a petition. The board should know exactly how much you really think you need the shower." So at that time, we were planning for our 50th anniversary of the auxiliary, and we had countless committees meeting all at one time in this clubhouse at the same day. And all we had to do is pass a little piece of paper from one committee for the shut scarf, one committee for the invitation, another committee for the whole week of activities. And I think we probably had 3 pages full of signatures at that time. Jan Pinkston was the president of the auxiliary board, and I waited in the bar that night. It was the last day that they were going to meet for the year. So he got up, and as Jan told me, he got up and started reading the names from this long list of signatures. And halfway through, he stopped and said, "Oops." And he said, The next name on the list was his wife's name. That was Mary Beth Shepherd. I wanted to mention also, because I think at the annual meeting we're going to have Latitude 38 represented, and they were a great promoter of women's sailing, racing, and I'll show you. They did a couple series on women racing, and interviewed a number of women that were in the WRA, interviewed a lot of people. But when that issue is going to come out, Ken ran down to the local boat store and looked for the issue and started laughing, and I was just coming into the door and he laughing and laughing, and he said, "Put this up." And it was me.